All right, let's dive right into this explainer and build our understanding of life from the ground up. Today, we're stripping away the textbook jargon to look at the absolute fundamental rules, structures, and categories that define literally every living thing on our planet. Our main goal here is to break down these complex biological systems and explain everything clearly.
So, I want to start by asking you a pretty fundamental question. What exactly makes something alive? I know, we kind of take life for granted, but in biology, defining it, especially when you look at something like a virus, is surprisingly tricky. Keep the common virus in mind as we go through this, because it's an entity that attacks us, causes disease, and seems to act with a real purpose.
But to actually be considered biologically alive, an entity has to pass a very strict checklist. It must be highly organized, react to stimuli, reproduce on its own, regulate its internal environment, use energy, and of course, evolve. Now, viruses, they actually fail this test because they can't reproduce or regulate themselves without hijacking the machinery of a living host cell. They aren't technically alive. They're more like biological zombies.
Here is our roadmap for today. We'll start with the definition of life, move into core cell theory, take a tour inside the cellular factory, compare prokaryotes and eukaryotes, and finally, look at how we classify the living world.
Section 1. The definition of life. If viruses don't make the cut, what does? Well, everything that is truly alive is governed by cell theory. Formulated way back in the 1830s by Schleiden and Schwann, and later finalized by Virchow, this is basically the absolute baseline for biology. It lays down 3 rules. First, all living organisms are composed of 1 or more cells. Second, the cell is the absolute smallest unit of life capable of independent replication. And third, all cells come from the division of pre-existing cells. Think about what that last point means for a second. Every single cell in your body right now is the result of an unbroken chain of division stretching back billions of years. Life doesn't just spontaneously appear, it's inherited.
Moving on to Section 2, the core cell theory.
Now that we know cells are the fundamental unit, let's look at the absolute simplest version of them. What's really fascinating about a classic prokaryotic cell, like a bacterium, is how minimalist it is. The DNA isn't locked away in some vault, it just floats openly in a central region called the nucleoid. These cells are microscopic, usually just 1 to 10 microns across. They've got a plasma membrane to control what goes in and out, a cell wall for protection, and little structures called ribosomes to make proteins. But they completely lack complex membrane-bound internal compartments. They are truly the minimalists of the biological world.
Section 3. Inside the cellular factory. As life evolved, cells scaled up. They became massive, highly organized microscopic factories, and compartmentalization was their ultimate efficiency hack. Think of it like this. The nucleus is the main office, holding the precious DNA blueprints. The mitochondria? Those are your power plants, churning out ATP energy. Ribosomes are the assembly line workers building proteins, while the Golgi apparatus acts as your shipping department packaging them up. You've got the endoplasmic reticulum moving materials around, and lysosomes acting as your waste management team. It's an incredible system, and without every single department doing its specialized job, the whole factory just shuts down.
Which brings us to Section 4, prokaryotes versus eukaryotes. Understanding those internal factories is really the key to the biggest structural divide in all of biology. The absolutely crucial point here is that eukaryotes have those internal compartments and a true membrane-bound nucleus, while prokaryotes do not. Prokaryotes, which include bacteria and archaea, keep it simple. But eukaryotes, they are massive by comparison and require a much more extensive infrastructure to survive. You, me, the trees outside, the mushrooms in the forest, we are all made up of these complex, organelle-packed eukaryotic cells.
But even within that complex eukaryotic category, there's immense diversity, totally dependent on an organism's survival strategy. I mean, animals move around, right? So their cells need to be flexible. They rely on lysosomes to process waste on the go, and centrioles to help with cell division. Plants, on the other hand, are stationary. They have to stand tall without a skeleton and literally make their own food. Because of that, they rely on rigid cellulose cell walls. They maintain their structure using water pressure from massive central vacuoles, and they use chloroplasts to harvest the sun's energy.
And finally, Section 5. Classifying the living world.
Let's see how scientists take these microscopic cellular differences and use them to categorize every single organism on Earth. For centuries, we thought kingdoms like Plantae and Animalia were the absolute ceiling of classification. But as we peered deeper into the actual molecular makeup of life, we realized our old visual categories just weren't cutting it. We had to create a brand new, broader rank. the domain.
Because as it turns out, our biological understanding definitely isn't static. Look at how this accelerates over time. Linnaeus gave us 2 kingdoms back in 1735. Haeckel added a third a century later when microscopes got a bit better. Whittaker gave us 5 in 1969, but the biggest, most disruptive shakeup happened incredibly recently, in 1990, thanks to a biophysicist named Carl Woese.
So, Woese is looking at deep genetic codes, specifically analyzing a slow mutating gene called 16S ribosomal RNA, and he proved that looks can be incredibly deceiving. He discovered that a group of extremophiles that everyone just assumed were weird bacteria actually had genetic machinery that was closer to us than to other bacteria. Naming them Archaea didn't just add a new category, it fundamentally rewrote the entire tree of life, proving once and for all that molecular differences matter way more than just what an organism looks like.
Which leads us with the ultimate grand classification, the 3 domains. If you understand the difference between cells with a nucleus and those without, this system just makes perfect sense. We have true bacteria in one domain, the rugged, extreme-surviving archaea in the second, and eukarya, which houses all the complex, nucleated cells of plants, animals, fungi, and protists, in the third.
So, here's a thought to leave you with. If our entire understanding of the biological tree was completely rewritten as recently as 1990, it really begs a thrilling question. As our microscopes and genetic sequencers get even more powerful, what invisible, revolutionary domains of life might be hiding right under our noses today? Keep that curiosity alive and keep looking closer.